Hey there everyone, this is Yui. Welcome to episode 17 of Enigmatica 2 Expert Skyblock. Today we're going to take control of some auto crafting, specifically for extended crafting, by getting into RFTools control. So let's get to it. As you've noticed, I crafted up the Wyvern armor. Power is doing great. I'll show that some other time. I wanted to jump into this because this takes a while to do. So I moved my pattern terminal over here, crafting terminal over here, and I've got a bunch of stuff. So here's the crafting core. If you're not familiar with it, it's right here. You need this to craft, well, the Wyvern armor, not the Draconic armor, but oh yeah, you do. You do need it for the Draconic armor. You don't need it for Awakened Draconium, stuff like that. But so you're gonna need this. There's screens. You can use it as an empowerer, which it's a lot faster for doing. But basically, you need this also for Charged Draconium, the Resonant Cell Frames Full, which is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do those two recipes today. What you have to do is you put the main ingredient on the side, or in the middle, and the rest go on the side, like very similar to the Empowerer, actually. So this automation technically will work for the Empowerer, but we're doing it naming-wise for the crafting core. And the whole point is to get items in the right spot, right timing, don't overfill it, whatever, and pull the items out and throw them back into storage. Now, the problem, and there's a few, IC2 crystals, they suck. Alright, there's no sugarcoating it, they just suck. You can't auto-craft these, and if you can, you are so lucky. Tell me how. Because when I try to auto-craft these using the stupid computer, even with Ore Dictionary, it just gets stuck. Crafting these, using those, they all get stuck. Luckily, I've already tested this out. This is my re-recording, so hopefully it's clearer. When you use these in a processing recipe, they work out. It's when you use them in a crafting recipe that they're bad. So I might switch some stuff over and test it out, and who knows, we'll see. But that's for a different time. Anyways, the other issue is this is more than 9 ingredients, and our patterns can only hold 9. And since we don't have a mod or anything that allows for extended patterns, we're going to have to split this up somehow. Now, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to have an intermediate crafting step. I'm going to say like 9 of these items will get us some other item that we don't have in our system and will never have in our system. In my case, I'm using these chiseled dirt because I don't intend to use it and it's never going to be in there, so I'm using chiseled dirt. So I'm going to say like most of these items will get us 1 piece of chiseled dirt, the rest will get us a different piece of chiseled dirt, and then when we craft the frame with the 2 dirt, we get our cell frame. So it's going to be like a 3-part craft. So to do that, we're going to use RFTools control. What we're going to need is the processor. This is the brains. Is this in the right spot? Help. Yeah, I got a screen linked up to the terminal for that spot. We're going to need power for the processor. We're going to need an output, which I am using modular storages. They're all linked to the same thing. Whatever goes in here gets imported into our system. The code that I have is very specific, so that's why I'm setting it up on the west side. You can adjust this later. So RFTools control, in a brief overview, is very similar to me, at least to me, to like Steve's Factory Manager. Alright, it's got some very powerful automation and checks and stuff you can do with it. The benefit of RFTools control is you can copy and paste code. Yep, that's right. So you can share it, you can import it into another world, and you can just all around copy, paste, load, save, whatever. So you can save it somewhere else and bring it to your next world, which is awesome. So I'm probably going to use this a lot more heavily in the future, if it's available. So the other thing we're going to need, crafting station. This we're not actually using, but we need it to suppress some errors in the programming because we're using crafting cards, but we're not using the crafting station. We're using them for recipes. We're going to need a programmer. This is like think of it as like the control block for Steve's Factory Manager, or the programmer for Integrated Dynamics. It is just where you do all your logic and then you save it to a card, which is one of these. So you put the card here, you save it, you bring the card, don't drop it on the floor, bring the card over here, throw it in one of these slots and load it up. Next, we're going to need 5 nodes. We're going to have one here for the pedestals. So this is just outputting to a crate, which just extracts and goes in there. Let me change this conduit. I already know it's there. Then we need one for the core. We're going to need one that holds the recipes for the cards. For the basically, this one's going to hold the recipes for anything that is 9 ingredients or less to craft. This one here is going to be what I'm calling staging. This is going to hold the recipes for the piecewise crafting. So for the frame, we're going to have 2 pieces. Those 2 pieces are going to be held in here. Then we're going to have one for input. So these are going to have, this is going to be the piecewise input, and this is going to be the regular input. The piecewise input, we're going to have 3 crates. This one is facing to the east, and this one is also to the east. So if you copy my code, these kind of have to be in the same position relative to the node. The nodes don't have to be in the same spots, but they can be wherever. It's just that the crates on the outside of the nodes have to be in the same spots that I'm using them. Or you can change them in the code if you're confident. The other thing I will say is that these must all be the same size inventory. So these 7 need to be the same. This one doesn't matter. So I'm using, well, specifically this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and that one. They all need to be the same size. This one doesn't matter, and that one doesn't matter. So just make them all the same just to save yourself some headache. Next up, we need to set up our network. So setting up the network is pretty simple. We have, in each of these nodes, there's a channel and a node. So the channel is going to be the same for all of these nodes. So for my case, I'm going to call them crafting. This node here is going to be input. And that's it. This one over here, channel, like I said, crafting. This one is going to be staging. This one here is craft. I spelled that wrong. And this is going to be cards. This we don't have to do anything with. This one here, once again, crafting. This is core. And this one, crafting. And this is pedestal. And there we go. So that's the network setup. Now we need to tell the processor to read the network. So if you look at the help command, net setup, that's what we're going to do. Net setup, and then whatever you called your channel. In my case, crafting. No network card. So we need a RAM, we need a network card, and we need a basic processor. So processor, we only need one because I'm just running it in just one big program basically instead of a bunch of little programs. So let's try this again. It should say found 5 nodes and 1 crafting station. The RAM gives us access to storing variables on the side. For this, if you click here, for our program, we're going to need 0, 1, and 2. And then we're going to need 0 to 23 over here. So I just have this as a dedicated thing. This over here might be overkill, but I have output in the last slot. And input, we technically can only go up to 21 items. No, 20. So technically you don't need 21 and 22, but just leave it. Like that again, this will just remain in the programmer. That is not associated to the card, it's associated to the programmer. Alright, with that, everything is set up. So what we can start doing is making recipes. Over here, I've got a bunch of ingredients. Alright, so let's start simple. A direct recipe, which is what this is. This is a setup direct recipe already. In our computer, right there, we're going to set up the pattern processing. We're going to say 2 draconium gets to 2 charged. This is not a piecewise one, so this is going in this crate at the bottom. Next, we have to set up the cards for the straight crafting. In this case, it's going to be the same thing. Whatever block goes into the core has to go here first. Since it doesn't matter which draconium block goes in the middle, they both can go here. You can stack it, that's fine. Then what you're going to do is put in the crafting card, and then put one of the results in this crate. Now, the reason I am doing this is because I am looping through this crate, finding any items here, and then grabbing the crafting card for it and checking to see if those ingredients are in the input chest. If so, craft it up. And then check the core to see if the result is in the core. If it is, take it out and throw it into our storage system. So I am doing it this way specifically so all I have to do to add more is add another card and then add another thing. I don't have to touch the code anymore past setting it up. But you haven't seen the code yet, so you don't have to worry about that yet. This recipe is, there you go, it's the elite control, whatever goes in the center first, and then 4 alloys. So it's a simple one. Now what I will say is that while the order here doesn't matter, I can switch these two around, they do need to be flush up against it. So there can be no spacing, it can't be like this. This one, at the bottom, it doesn't matter. This can be like that, but I just keep them in line with them so I can find the patterns easily. So with that, charged draconium is actually done for recipe-wise. Let's set up the code. So I have it saved in my clipboard, so if you're going to copy and paste this, I'm going to try to create a Pastebin link for it. Come into your programmer, click the very top left, and if you hold control, it shows you the different things you can do. All we're going to do is control V for paste. And this is the program. It starts down here. So if you're not, I'm not going to go over too much with controls and what to do with it. In short, yellow is basically execute the event. So you have things like on a redstone signal, do something. On timers, do something. This one is if you send yourself a signal, which is the purple, you send yourself a signal, you can receive the signal somewhere else and execute code. That's basically what we're doing there. These white ones here are just kind of wires. Think of them as connectors. So like up here, the green indicates where to go. So it goes over this way. Then it goes up here. So basically we're connecting this wait operation to this examine item eval without being directly next to it. Red is for false, green is for it happened. True usually. True or it worked. So these blue ones, they're evals. They're going to be like your, here you go, get items. Count items, this is get number of slots in the inventory. Examine an item, which is get item in slot. Like here would be slot 0 to return program card. Then you can get the name, damage values. There's a bunch of things, different power levels, liquids, stuff like that. This is also where your constant number is and your constant strings are, if you need to compare things or start indices at like 0 or 1 or whatever. That's in there. The pink one, there are your tests, your logic tests. So greater than, equal to, check items are the same. Check if it's compared to variables, those are those two. And then the bottom ones, they're the operations. So they're do something, either arithmetic, like here, concatenation. They're also your move items, move fluids, stuff like that. They're all down here. So with that, that's the very basic explanation. This isn't a mod spotlight, so basically what mine is it starts here, calls out to a function which goes over here, goes down there, and all that fun stuff. We'll go over it in a second. But what we could do is, what was I thinking? let's set up the recipe for this other part first before explaining the code so it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so Draconium, we're done with. That can go away. Other thing I want to set up is this. This is going to be a piecewise crafting. So if we look at it, so there's our result, and that's our centerpiece. But we're going to have 9 pieces. They're going to become one thing. And then we're going to have 5 additional ones. They're going to become something else. And then there's our centerpiece and our result. So for our computer, the recipe is going to be simple. We're going to do each of these items. Which ones you pick, it doesn't really matter. Just like I said, in this particular recipe, these crystals suck, so you have to prematurely craft them before you actually try to run the recipe or to fail. So what we're going to say is, if you pass me these 9 items, you're going to get a dirt block. That's a good deal, huh? Specifically, this chiseled dirt block with nether bricks. So we can close this out, and then we could say, hey, pass me the remaining 5 items. And you'll get this other pretty dirt block. And there we go. So that's the computer side for the piecewise. And then we combine the 2 pieces together. We're going to say pass it the centerpiece and the piece of dirt and the other piece of dirt. And we're going to say, hey, that becomes this. Now we do that specifically because the computer will not have these, so it'll have to provide the items to get them, which is why it is very important to pick items that you do not have in the system and don't plan to have in the system. For me, it's the dirt. Alright, so now placing the recipes. The 2 piecewise ones that return just the pieces of dirt, they go for the piecewise. The final piece is going to go over here, because this is going to be the final crafting. This is where it all happens. It needs to provide the core to get it. Now, we need to set up the recipes. This is going to be very similar as to the computer. We're going to say these 9. Keep going. That gets you this piece of dirt. And then we're going to say these 5 get you this piece of dirt. Alright. Then we just put the 2 piecewises in the left. At the top, we're going to put 1 of each dirt. And in this side crate, we're going to put the rest. Now this will be what gets returned to the computer, comes out of this crate. And basically, when it finds it in this crate here, it puts it back in here. But we need this for comparison purposes, so that way you can check this. So now, if we put, say, these 5 items in here, they're going to pull it out. Oh. Hang on. The program is technically not running. We need to give this a name when we save it. We're going to call it core automation. Okay. And I think I just threw it on the ground. There it is. So we're going to run this here. So what it's going to do is pull them out of there, put them in here. It's going to grab the corresponding piece of dirt and throw it in the modular storage, which means that piece of dirt is in the computer. Like that. So we can pull these items back out because they shouldn't be in there. And now what that means is this is set up. So we can actually put all of these pieces in here. Look up frame. Craft the frame. When you craft it, make sure you have a crystal available. Okay? Can't stress that enough. If it has to craft it, it's going to get stuck and it's going to mess stuff up. Then you're going to have to pull the dirt out separately after you cancel the recipe. Just make sure it's available. Okay. We want to make sure that the 2 pieces of dirt are crafting and they're not available. So those are the only things you got to check. Then we hit start. It's going to dump the items in here and dump them in here. The order doesn't matter because the recipe determines what items get pulled out. Oh, we didn't set up the other recipe. There we go. Let's set up the other recipe real quick. The other recipe is the frame must go first, whatever gets empowered. Then it's all the rest of the items. There. Let's going down the list. And there. And then we need a output. None in there, so let's grab it out of here. That becomes this. Okay, once again, we put in the card here. This card doesn't do anything until we put the resultant up here. Now, if we just... well, yeah, let's cancel it. That's fine. Cancel you. Throw all this back in. Alright, so as I was saying before, I crashed. We set up the recipe over here. And up here goes the resultant. So now we should actually be able to craft the frame. We go here, tell it next. Double check once again that the crystal is not crafting and that the dirt is crafting. And then start it. Close this right away. It'll go in here. Go down here. All this stuff will go in there. It'll go up and craft. Boom. And once it finishes, then it'll move that dirt over. Just the way that it's set up. Boom. Done. Go, so you check here. Dirt's gone. Come back in here. Crafting is finished. And there should be 3 frames now instead of 2. Boom. There we go. So that's the whole thing in action. So if... well, yeah. If you're interested in that part, that's it. So moving on, we're just going to talk about the programmer. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Alright, so if you stuck around, you want to take a look at the code. So the code in here starts at the bottom right. Starts here with this. So every second, every 20 ticks, every second, it'll start up the code. A single means if it's already running, don't try to run it again. So every 20 seconds, it'll try to kickstart it if it's not already running, basically. First thing it does is it calls out to the staging. Staging, remember, is what moves the stuff from this left crate to the bottom crate, and it moves the dirt to this system, and it moves the dirt from that crate back into storage. That's the staging part. It's used for the piecewise part. So that comes over here. This is the main staging. The first thing it does is it counts up the number of squares inside of the crate. So the inventory is the size of the inventory. It subtracts 1 from it, and then it stores it in variable 0. So for all of these where we're dealing with storing the size of the inventory, it's storing it in variable 0. So it's overlapping in various spots. Whenever we're doing an index, which is what comes up next, we're starting the index at 0. We're storing that in variable 1. And then we store the item, which is this one, in variable 2. So wherever you see variable 0, it's usually going to be the size of the inventory. Wherever you see variable 1, it's the index of the loop. And wherever you see variable 2, it's the item. Those are stored over here, 0, 1, and 2. So that's why we need those three variable slots for the program. So coming back here, like I said, we get the size, we subtract 1 because we're dealing with a 0 to index, or the max minus 1. We store that. Then we're setting a variable 0, which is used for the loop. We're just storing in a variable. And we're saying from whatever that variable is, in this case 0, to variable 0, which remember is the max size. We are going this way, we follow the green arrows. We are getting the item in that slot from the staging which is this one. This is the staging node, so we're getting this item first, that dirt block. If it's a valid item, we continue. If it's not a valid item, then we just break out and go on. So if it is valid, we store it in variable 2, and then we move on to the check. The check is to see if we can craft it. This is the check staging. So what it does is, first thing is it retrieves the dirt from previous crafting from this bottom crate and puts it back into storage. So that's what this fetch items is. It pulls it from the input down and it puts into the staging east, which is the dirt storage basically for me. After that, we're using a smart get ingredients card. So what this one will do is, if all the items to craft that card are in the specified storage, in this case input to the east, this side one, we are taking it and we are going to move it into the system. Well, it's going to go into the system and it's eventually going to end up in the input down position. But that doesn't happen until actually over here. So if it can actually import the items, this is going to return 0. To see that, there's a card right, where is it? They all look the same. Get ingredient smart. If you look over this, it'll say, otherwise try to request all missing items. Return 0 on success, -1 on failure. So what we're doing is we're checking that return to see if it's 0. That means it was true, it found all the items. So if it found all the items, we're actually going to push all the items into the input slot down. This input slot down is a required thing, but I don't think it's used for anything. It's just required to not have any errors in the code. So like I said, we're then putting it down all the slots, and then all we're doing is we're fetching the same piece of dirt that we're checking for and putting it in the output, which is here. So it goes back into the computer. That's all that staging does. After staging is complete, it moves on to the main crafting. So it moves on to main crafting here, which is on failure if it can't find anything. And it moves on if it checks everything and it works, basically. So the main crafting is up here. And it does very similar things. It gets the inventory size. It loops through starting, well, it subtracts 1, it stores it. It loops through starting at 0, stores that as the index variable. So it goes from 0 to the size of the crate, which is what, like 116? Yeah, 117 without the -1, something like that. Grabs the item, so it does the same thing. Checks to see if it's a valid item. So basically what that is doing is it goes here, that's a valid item, yep, that's a valid item, that's a valid item, this is not a valid item, that's its kill command, which is why this will never pick up the cell frame, it has to be adjacent to it. So it checks it, makes sure it's valid. If it's not valid, it kills it, and then it'll start back up after the 20 ticks. If it is, we store it. Stored in variable 2, and move on to our check function. Our check function is right next to it. All we do is we check to see if all the ingredients from the crafting card are in the input chest. If they are, so if this equals 0, then we can move on and start crafting. I have a debug start crafting here. All the debug start crafting does is it reports that starting to craft. Because this is where you actually know it's starting to craft. All I do is I get to the name of the item that is stored in the variable, concatenate it with the starting to craft thing, and output it to the debug thing. And then it moves on to the actual start crafting, which is right under it. What that does is it takes the items. The very first thing it does is it pushes to the core. So it pushes right here to the up one. So whatever item is first in the crafting card, not in the crate, but in the crafting card, is what gets put in the center. So the order of items that go into the crate, it does not matter. It matters how you set up the cards. So it puts the first item into the crate. The rest of the items go into the pedestal thing. This looks like it's a typo, but it just truncates it The rest of the items go there, and then it moves on to the get results. Get results is what does the weighting. So that's right here. It goes here, it examines the item that's in the core. So the item in the core is either going to be nothing, it's going to be whatever the ingredient is, so in our case like the empty frame, or it's going to be the crafted item. So if we get the thing and we're going to compare it to what we're looking for, which is the full frame in this case. If it finds it, we pull it out and we put it in storage, and then we just say crafting complete. If it does not find it, that's following the red line here. It goes down here and it waits 20 ticks, which is 1 second, and then it loops back up here, grabs the item again, and checks it again. So basically, until it changes over, it's going to loop in this section. And then basically, once it gets to this end, it's like it kills it, and thus starting the program all over again. So this will just keep running and running. That way you can craft multiple things at a time. So that's the quick explanation of the code. I hope that made sense. I will, like I said, copy this, put it in a Pastebin. If you find issues with it, let me know and I can fix it up, or you can fix it up yourself if you're confident. Anyways, that's going to be it for this episode. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.